You got it.
Good evening, everybody. Denise Fang, and welcome to this video. I have made very little efforts to reference the Danganronpa series, but I'm actually a pretty big fan. And as you can see from the title, I'm not alone. Can I introduce my collaborator, or may they introduce themselves?
Yo, what's up, everyone? It's me, my Pop Tart. Welcome back, friends and foes alike. You may not know me. I've been behind the scenes of a few of Blue Fang's videos, specifically a lot of the Hunger Games. If you watched UFC Fighters, if you watched Dead by Daylight Killers, that was all me.
Yep. And Danganronpa is a series we both have in common. Now, this is a series about teenagers being forced to kill each other. That's the super severe basics, and all of these characters are characters who have made it to the end of the game. Massive spoilers if you haven't played the series. Please, I beg of you, go
Yeah,
play it.
me. Yeah, it's really good. I know it isn't for everyone, but it is actually super interesting. Even if even if a lot of it is memes, it's still a very heartfelt series.
And I see that there's no further time to waste than by jumping into number 14. The worst survivor is Yasuhiro Hagakure. Before we get started, I
Yeah.
do want to mention that over here in the corner, you'll see our names and numbers. It essentially means because we didn't fully agree, this is where we would place this character in the list. There have been two instances of where a character was so close in quality that we just played rock, paper, scissors to determine their spot, and Yasuhiro was one of them. But would you like to delve into
Yeah.
why he is the worst survivor of them all?
Yeah, I think we should. To start off with, man, Yasuhiro is one of the least important characters to the narrative of Part 1. Sure, he had the Robo Justice case, and sure, he had stuff from the Future Foundation, but in the game itself, he did quite literally nothing. It's almost ridiculous.
Hero basically acts as an obstacle the entire time. I mean, to bring up Robo Justice, he wasn't the culprit, but damn, was it heavily suspicious that he was. He was a fucking obstacle the entire time. Need I mention Case 4 with his Megamind ass head?
Yeah, and not he's also like what they try to do with Yasuhiro is they make him the comic relief, even though you already had two really good senses of levity in Toko and Hina, two characters we'll talk about later, and it falls completely flat for Hero.
I'm gonna point this out because this is Pop Tart's favorite character. He should have died in Case 3 over Taka.
Correct. I will always defend Taka because he should have made it at least past Hero because with this death in Case 3, Taka's entire storyline was cut criminally short.
That and it really just like you cut it short for Yasuhiro. He wasn't doing anything. Like,
Right.
why Yasuhiro? Anyways, this is why, in our personal
Plus,
opinion. Oh, no, sorry. You go first.
it's alright. Plus, it would have been even more interesting if um fanfic writer kid said Yasuhiro, and instead of it being like Yasuhiro killed them, it would be that Yasuhiro's also dead, so
I mean, yeah, Hifumi. I still don't know why Hifumi said Celestia's real name, but I'll leave that up to him being a creep and just knowing shit. But it would have been so
right.
much more interesting if Yasuhiro was also a victim, and they would think that he would know something about that, only to realize he was trying to give away the murderer before he would squeal. Yasuhiro Hagakure is the definition of outstayed their welcome. For Pop Tart, at least. At number 13, my personal least favorite character throughout the entire series is Himiko Yumeno. Where do I
Now the
begin?
reason why no, sorry, go ahead.
This I know V3 has a bad rap with underdeveloping every character whose name doesn't begin with a K, aka Kokichi or Kaito. And Himiko does seem like Prime, but even if she got the development, I don't know if Himiko could have been saved.
Right. And while I definitely don't hate her as much as Hero because Sure, she survived when she shouldn't have, but she didn't cut off one of my favorite characters. Well, my favorite character.
Like, Himiko Yameno is just Yasuhiro, but what makes it so worse is that it's V3ified, and in my opinion, a lot of V3 feels like inserted fanfics. But one thing that really takes it off to make Himiko my least favorite character in the series is her abysmal sprite work. She's the ultimate magician, so what you're expecting is someone who's hyperactive, destined to prove that magic works. You get that in writing, but you get that horrible in the sprites. She could not look more bored if she tried.
Yeah, it's frankly ridiculous. She even acted hyper and like all that. It was all because of the sprites that really made it fall flat.
Like, it's just. And the worst part is that Himiko, much like Yasuhiro, is again cucking such great characters. Gonta, Mew, Kaito, Kokichi. When a Danganronpa game gets to chapter 4, I feel like at that point it gets so creative and everyone's emotionally invested and everyone left. You can say that for Case 4 in the original game, and you can say that for Game 4 in Case 2. But Himiko being in there means you can't say it, and being that she's one of the 3 that survived just feels like a wasted slot.
Talk that she never interacted with the main 3 of Kaito, Maki, and Shuichi, and it just felt kind of pointless because you had another person right there in the final 4 during the Samugi twist that could have been like a much better spot, and that was Kibo.
Agreed. Basically, every character except for Samugi would have been a far better pick. Every character except for Samugi that made it to Chapter 4. I get that there's deaths like Kokichi that need to happen, but everyone would have liked to see characters like Kokichi or Kaito make it further.
Speaking of Kokichi, man, him getting so much attention really did take away from Himiko's development.
In my personal opinion, I can go into why Kokichi just is, although he's a good character, can sour V3, but that's for another video. Moving onward to number 12. I want to say from here on out, we have something nicer to say to all these survivors. From here on out, there's no purely negatives like there were Yasuhiro and Himiko. And moving on.
And to start that off,
number 12, Sonia Nevermind.
Yeah, she's definitely like Blue Fang said. Sonia is definitely a tier above the other 2 survivors to this point, but she's still just kind of bland in a way. You know, she doesn't have a lot going on with her. And it could have been so she had a lot of potential. She really did. It just never clicked with me.
She only really gets the chance to bounce off of Soda. I know that if you watch the anime, she bounces off of Gundam really well, and I do see that there is an attraction between her and Gundam. But again, Gundam dies, and the only character she interacts with outside of Gundam is Soda, and what makes it even worse is that she only really interacts with Gundam in Case 4, the case where he dies.
Right. And even then, Case 4 had so many other more interesting things going on.
Such
as the case itself.
Playing as Nagito.
Yeah, right, and then all the stuff that Fuyuhiko did.
And just the mystery and how it fucking works. Nekumara's return to his subsequent death. There was so much more interesting going on in Chapter 4 that Sonia, although she does have her positives there, kind of blends into the background.
Yeah, she got lost in the shuffle.
What I really feel like is a more understated point is that she ultimately has a wasted ultimate.
Right.
My first thought was that, oh, okay, is it going to be her or Fuyuhiko's that's going to be the Byakuya clone in this game? And as we'll get to with Fuyuhiko later, his development, it's like, oh, okay, Sonia might be the Fuyuhiko of this game. Wait, no.
Sonia might be the Byakuya of this game.
Yeah, Byakuya of this game. And it's like, wait, no, they don't do that. Okay, so she has a particular fascination with the occult. Alright, so a princess who has a fascination in dictatorship. That could be an interesting play on things. Someone that you never can expect what they'll know. But no, she just Blandy McBlandface. She's the Princess Peach of all the female characters and female survivors.
Right, and to build on the point you said about Fuyuhiko, it would have been really interesting to see her heel turn. See Fuyuhiko face turned. A heel turn would have been really interesting for Sonya. You could have made her the bad guy. You could have had really interesting clashes between her with, say, Hajime, and Nagito, especially Nagito.
Yeah, Nagito Komaeda. By the way, a lot of people don't know this, but Nagito's name is an anagram for Makoto Naegi-da, Japanese for I am Makoto Naegi. Wow, Sonya's so bland. The most interesting point that came out of mine was an anagram of Nagito's name. Moving onward to number 11, we have Maki Harukawa, everyone's favorite discount your forger.
Now, I will say, given that she's part of the main three of the third game, she does get more screen time, but at the same time, she's by far the most boring of the three.
Like, yeah, I wouldn't argue that Shuichi's much better, but he has the interesting Remembrance of the Case 1 twist, and you get to experience a lot of things through his eyes. But let's be honest here, the only thing we really remember is Maki X Kaito. Another victim of Kokichi's major attention throughout the game, because, like I said, Kokichi, although was an absolutely fan-favorite character, fucking stole the show and the damn spotlight. He didn't just, had the spotlight shine on him, he physically carried the spotlight over his head so no other character could get it.
Right. Maki could have really used some of it, especially when the final case rolled around. She felt just kind of there, a lot like Himiko, but to a lesser extent.
Agreed. Just another case of a wasted ultimate, too. We never really get to see anything done with the ultimate assassin. Even something as simple as, what Mikan did in the second game, where she was a coroner and able to figure out how the body died and when. We never even get to see that from Maki. And I think that'd be, the least of what she could do.
Right, and honestly, she needed, just like Sonya before her, she needed more people to bounce off of, because you already had the loader of the group in Shuichi, so you needed her to go talk to other people, and she just didn't.
Agreed. Maki Harukawa is the third, between the three that survived in V3, is the best performing female. And speaking of V3, at number 10, the best performing of the V3 cast that survived, Shuichi Saihara.
Now, again, like Sonya, like Maki, he's not bad, but he's a little bland.
Much like every V3 character that came before it, a victim of the Kokichi attention. But what makes it even worse for Shuichi is that, honestly, the twist in Case 1 kind of works in his detriment in later games. Because it feels like they said, okay, so we made him the new protagonist after Case 1, and just kind of gave up after that.
Right. They really did try and make Kyoko again, and it did not work.
It especially doesn't work because V3's case complication, making it just seem so flat that you're the only one receiving information as it happens.
Right, like in the other two games, there were people smarter than Hajime and Makoto, making new information much more significant. It really felt like the cases were coming to you. Shuichi does not have that. He has this whole thing where the case comes to him. Or, he goes to the case.
Yeah, a discount Kyoko, you don't realize that Kyoko doesn't work when you're the protagonist. And again, I think that's another victim of the twist in Case 1, is that they wrote him exactly like Kyoko after the fact. But what made Kyoko work so well was that she wasn't playable. I honestly think that V3 just being super safe outside of making the case one twist. I honestly think it would have been better if it was just Kaede. If you started as Shuichi and then you swapped into Kaede.
Right. But I will give Shuichi this. He is part of the reason that Kaito shined. Without Shuichi, Kaito does not become as important or interesting as he does.
That is true. Because, in my opinion, between all the V3 characters and cast, I think Kaito was the only one who wasn't starved for attention that wasn't taken from Kokichi. And Shuichi definitely feels like third place in that award because of his Kaito interactions and that allowing Kaito to shine.
Right, and while there are still other characters that get attention, like Gonta, the only reason Gonta got said attention was because he was under Kokichi's thumb.
Yep. But anyways,
now, don't get me wrong, I love Gonta. Don't get me wrong, I love Gonta. But Kokichi really just
case 4 to prove his point. And you might see this point of design debate. This is mostly because we don't agree on Shuichi's design. I honestly think he's the worst designed of the protagonists.
Yeah, but I really like Shuichi's design. I think he looks great.
I mean, I'm not saying that he looks bad. I'm just saying he looks bland, and unlike Hajime, it doesn't really serve into his story. But
yeah, I guess I'm just into the pseudo-emo stuff he's got going on.
Yeah. But moving on from Shuichi to a more interesting character at number 9, we have one of our biggest debates, Aoi Asahina, everyone's favorite Dunkin' customer.
Right. See, like Bluefang mentioned at the beginning of the video, we each have our own rankings at the bottom right, and starting here we have a huge disparity where Bluefang had her at 12 while I had her at 6.
So we averaged it out and put it at 9. To start with why I think that Aoi Asahina should be down low. While I do agree she has a great case 4, I do absolutely agree that Sakura and Hina was great. I honestly think that a clueless character just doesn't serve the ending that well, and while nowhere near as infuriating as shall we say, Yasuhiro, again, if you want levity, we got Toko coming up later. And it's just Aoi Asahina, especially after Game 1, when what makes it even worse is that Game 1 characters tend to come back. Toko came back in Ultra Despair Girls, Makoto, Kyoko, and Byakuya came back in 2 in Ultra Despair Girls 2. It just makes it even worse when Aoi and Yasuhiro never came back, and they never got something outside of this appearance.
Yeah, but on the other side, my side, like he had said before, Case 4 is one of the best moments, in my opinion, of Danganronpa history. Hina trying her best to deflect blame and save herself was humanizing. It was devastating. It felt real. It was some of the best writing Danganronpa has ever done.
And I completely agree. I don't want to say that Aoi was such a bad character, because agreed that she has some great moments. It's just that 1 has a high bar set with its future appearances, and unfortunately Hina does not get that leverage.
Yeah, and I can agree she's not the best of the first game, and not even my top 2. She works so much better as levity, and outside of the cases, she really shines, especially with her relationships with Sakura and really funny interactions with Toko.
Correct. But moving on from one of our divides with Hina, let's move on to number 8, our biggest divide of all, Byakuya Togami.
Now, I had Byakuya way low. I had him all the way down at 12.
I had him at 5. Because my thing with Byakuya Togami...
the reason...
Oh, you go first.
Yeah. So the reason why there's such a disparity here is because while I understand that he was designed to be hateable in the first game, just because it worked doesn't mean I have to respect him. Like, Byakuya is an ass, and I frankly just cannot take it sometimes.
I completely agree. Byakuya is absolutely an ass. But what gets it for me is that he's not like Jar Jar Binks. You're supposed to hate Byakuya, and the second thing is too what makes him less hateable for me is his mindset. He's the ultimate affluent prodigy. Something that I will say, especially you can see this with his actions in case 2, he's helping with the cases not to get everyone out like someone like say Kyoko or Makoto. He's helping out with the cases so he can win.
Right. And well, while my case for having Byakuya so low is completely due to his personality, I do think that he has some of the best case moments from part 1, especially the mixing up of Chihiro's body and revealing of Toko as Genocide Jill.
Like we said, case 2 was a great case for Byakuya.
Right. And from then, after the first game, Byakuya became a lot better, especially in Ultra Despair Girls and Danganronpa 2. Byakuya became far better.
Agreed, because that time he was still an ass, but this time you knew where his motivations lie. He wasn't in it to win a game. He was in it to save the world, as it was.
Right.
It honestly kind of feels...
I think that...
Okay, I'm gonna go. It honestly kind of feels like Byakuya is just a smart Bakugo, if you really look at it.
Yeah, that's certainly something. And yeah, I just honestly think that due to his new role in Despair Girls and 2, you really get to feel that he's an ass not longer just to be an ass, but because he's tired of it all.
Yeah. Moving on from him at number 7, everyone's favorite multiple personality disordered maniac, Toko Fukawa.
Now, coming off of Byakuya's train to Toko is kind of funny to me. Especially because...
Byakuya x Toko?
Because, yeah. That, and the fact that we're coming off of 2 of our biggest disparities to one of the weirdest, similar picks.
What really makes Toko up here, though, in my opinion, is not her actions in Game 1. It's that she was one of the lucky few that got the Despair Girls glow up. And oh boy, did Despair Girls do her some absolute favors.
Right. I think that without Despair Girls, Toko would have been in the bottom 4.
Honestly...
Not because she's a bad character, but because she needed more development, and Despair Girls gave her that.
I have to say this. I honestly feel like Toko was easily the hardest one for me to place, because on the one hand, I feel like she is a little better than some of the people above her, but at the same time, it's only because of Despair Girls, and if you were putting it off in the initial game, she would be worse than the people lower, so I figured this was a common middle ground for us to place her in.
Right. And at the same time, with Toko, you really had the case of this was the levity character. In Game 1, she was the one that was giving you a sense of levity, not Hiro or, to an extent, Hina.
Hina was more how to do a clueless character right. Someone for all the fan-based characters to kind of go with, oh yeah, I can kind of relate to this. And Hiro was just dumb laugh. But he wasn't the one that got to laugh. The comedy work was being carried by Genocide Jill.
Right. I mean, her interactions with Byakuya, Hina, and, just the entire cast were fantastic. And outside of the cases, she may have been the second best character from Part 1.
And of course, we can't mention Toko's interactions with any character without mentioning Kamura Naegi? Makoto's sister.
Makoto's sister?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, her interactions with Makoto's sister were really nice, but, I felt like she got more time with comedy-wise the first game.
Agreed. But still, Toko Fukawa is definitely someone who went on a roller coaster of emotions all throughout this series. and you gotta give it up to her. This is someone that at the beginning I was not expecting to like nearly as much as I did.
Right.
But moving on from Toko, at number 6, everyone's favorite Frankie impersonator, Kazuichi Soda.
Now, I like Soda, he's very funny, but immediately off the bat you have to mention Sonya, and that drags him down.
It drags him down so fucking much that he's a Soda simp.
Right.
Like, he could have we get to see bits and pieces of what he would act like too. Like, as an example, the interactions with Hajime at the end of like game 2 at the case 4. We get to see bits and pieces of how he interacts with other characters outside of the girls, but it's just never enough.
Yeah, I agree. Like, case 4 was the closest we ever got to a Soda that I wanted to see.
One thing that I will say that works positively in Soda's favor is that he works at whether he does survive or doesn't. He's one of those characters that we could have seen dying, but at the same time, we're not pissed off that he survived.
Right, it's so hard for Danganronpa to write characters that could be both dead or alive, yet somehow Soda works in both cases.
And that's honestly something that's carrying him way more, because if he was infuriating and a sim for Sonya, just we would have wanted to see him dead.
Gotten lower than Hero.
I honestly see some people say if they wanted to do the double murder twist in case 3, they should have went with Soda instead of Ibuki.
I mean, I could see that happening, but then again, that removes case 4 from Soda's character.
Agreed. But moving on.
And then, sorry.
You first. You finish your point.
Yeah, no. What I was gonna say is that on top of that, with all of the serious characters coming into the final few cases, it really did work to have an absolute goofball like Soda.
Yeah. I will say that.
So yeah, I really liked having him in the final cases.
And speaking of goofballs to make it to the final cases in Game 2, at number 5, everyone's favorite discount shonen protagonist, Akane Owari.
Yeah, I mean, I like Akane. She felt like a real evolution of Hina, but some of her is still a little weak.
Yeah.
Especially inside the trials, she really didn't do a whole lot.
I mean, Nekomaru and Akane is easily one of the best rivalry relationships in the series. And when talking about good moments outside of the trial, her backstory is just kind of traumatic when you see someone like the Crummy Room being called a luxurious paradise to her.
Yeah, it's rough, and to have such a fun character have actual depth and that kind of a backstory works in her favor.
I think Akane is the definition of like you can absorb 1% of the person's pain, goes to the class clown, falls to the fucking floor.
Yeah, I feel that, but at the same time, with her background and stuff, you'd expect her to be some kind of like quiet, depressed, athletic girl. But she is by far the funniest character of Part 2.
Yeah. And adding to that comedy, maybe not intentional, but that button is putting in work being the strongest thing in this franchise.
Other than Nakamaru taking a shit.
I had to take a shit!
Plus having Game Grumps go with, look, Hajime, I'm already eaten, like...
Look, Hajime, I've already eaten. Look, Hajime, look at how much I've already eaten. Akane is a good moment for comedy, and it's really good with laughing, and I gotta place her up for that high out of that respect. Although the reason she's not
one of the characters that got hard carried from stuff outside of the trials, I just wish she had a tad more inside of them.
Yeah, agreed. But here we are at the final 4. From here on out, these are characters who we have like purely positive things to say about. Characters who absolutely needed to survive, and thank goodness they did. Important inside and outside of the trial. And at number 4, let's start with the very first character we ever hear from this franchise. Everyone's favorite hopeful lucky student, Makoto Naegi.
Yeah, to start off with, Makoto is by far the most human character we meet in the first game. Like, it's ridiculous how real he feels.
Like, in a world where everyone's an ultimate at something, we get explained right off the bat, Makoto got lucky that he is an ultimate student.
Right.
And just putting in the relatability on top of the future foundation in the later games, you really get to see him grow from someone unremarkably average and basically a self-insert to a true-born leader.
Right, and that's a really good arc to have your protagonist take, especially with something as difficult as Danganronpa to mix like that, because you have to have them be smart enough to face the trials, but have them have an actual arc, and I think they did that really well for Makoto.
Speaking of things they've done well for Makoto, I want to talk about how Makoto is the only one where it really feels personal to beat Junko and Monokuma.
Right, he felt like he had a personal grudge against them, and that really worked for him, because someone like Byakuya wanted to win, Kyoko really wanted to decide against the cases and all of that, Hina just wanted to get out, same with Hiro, but Makoto wanted to defeat them, and that was great to see from him.
Not only that, but even in Game 2, where you can ultimately say that Hajime is the one who puts the end to Junko, you can't really say that Hajime has such a personal connection to defeat her the same way that Makoto did. If I'm going to make an apt comparison, I'm going to make a Dragon Ball comparison. Makoto versus Junko feels like Vegeta versus Frieza. Vegeta has far more personal stakes than Goku does when the fight, but Vegeta isn't the one who ultimately defeats him. Hajime, who is the Goku in this comparison, is the one who ultimately defeats it and gets the transformation.
Right, but with that kind of analogy, you still get one of the best characters in Makoto, because Makoto is so personally bounded to someone like Junko, to someone like Monokuma, to the whole point of hope versus despair.
It really doesn't work without Makoto. And speaking of something that doesn't work without Makoto and Kyoko.
Yeah, these two really bounce off of each other incredibly well. The fact that they had such a mysterious character bounce off of someone completely average was really nice to see, and it really did help in Game 1's favor.
Another thing I'm going to point out, too, is that for Game 1's favor, Kyoko never feels like she's giving a whole lot of information, but what makes Makoto seem so much more special and unique is that even though he's never giving Makoto all the information, she's giving him more than any other character there. I mean, look at the final 6 survivors. Hiro and Hina are dumbasses. Who in their right minds would trust Genocide Jill with anything? And Tagami is going to be a smartass to use it to try and win and torture you in the next case.
Right. So it really did feel like Kyoko and Makoto were like the best part of Game 1.
Even though Makoto ultimately didn't get to know the rest of the Trigger Happy cast. And if it wasn't for that, he would absolutely score higher, but that's why he has to take the lowest spot of the essential Elite Fours, I'm going to call it here. Hello?
No, I'm right here. What's up?
Okay, good. Discord's been finicky. So far it's working. But at number 3, this is another case of rock, paper, scissors, and me losing. If it was up to me, this character would be number 2, as they are my personal second favorite character, Kyoko Kirigiri.
Now, I know this is a little weird talking about Makoto and Kyoko back to back, but honestly, I think it could also help with the fact that they're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. They absolutely are two sides of the same coin. And this is at the expense of Shuichi. You can't do a mysterious character if they're the protagonist, which is what makes Kyoko work so well, leading the game game's trials and still being able to have the mystery. She is the walking question mark of game 1, but it works so well when you don't kill them first thing. Looking at you, 2 and 3.
Right. Right, and another thing they did really well with her is that she led the cases along with Makoto and Byakuya, but she really felt like she was the smartest out of all of them. Now, does that mean she was the most strategic? No, I'd argue that was Byakuya. But at the same time, she really did have a lot to offer, and it really did help with us figuring things along. Like, figuring things out as it went.
To add to his point, to add with Byakuya was just a strategic player. He knew what he was doing, but he was doing it so he could win. With how Kyoko was acting, she was doing it so everyone could survive that wasn't the killer. And that's what makes her smarter, is that she knew what was going on and she knew who to blame and how to clear people's names beforehand.
Right. A lot of Game 1 did involve a lot of luck. Like, how in the world did Celeste end up finding the blue jumpsuit, like, during the Chihiro case? Like, that was a lot of luck involved, but Kyoko finding all of her evidence was never based on luck.
It always felt reasonable and absolutely justifiable with Kyoko. And, side note, best Game 1 design.
Yeah, she does have, like, a really, really good design.
I'm a sucker for that tuxedo aesthetic, and it works better on the ladies. Do not wear dresses, ladies. Wear a tuxedo to your next fancy event. See how many compliments you'll get. But Kyoko Kirigiri, my personal favorite female character and my second favorite character in the franchise. But moving on from that is number 2, the protagonist of Game 2, everyone's favorite Super Saiyan warrior, Hajime Hinata.
Yes, I love this guy. This guy was my favorite protagonist for a reason.
I absolutely agree. Hajime Hinata is the best protagonist. And if we're going to say that Akane is the discount shonen protagonist, Akane is more just Luffy or Goku in that they're super athletic but dumb. Hajime feels more like an Ichigo. Smart, but wrestles with an inner demon that holds them back. In his case, Izuru Kamakura.
Yeah, Izuru. Yeah, and to build off of Izuru is one of the most interesting characters that Danganronpa has ever wrote. As someone who was originally meant to be this be-all, end-all of hope, to believe in despair because of Junko, it was one of the most interesting storylines through Despair Girls and into 2. It really felt like Izuru was, like, important, and that's hard to do when you introduce them in Despair Girls.
Mm-hmm. But another thing that we have, Hajime Hinata, the best zero to hero story imaginable. Hajime is another walking question mark, much like Fat Togami was in the first case. But Hajime was definitely one like Kyoko, where no one knew his ultimate talent, but for the ultimate twist being that he didn't have an ultimate talent. He wasn't even someone like Nagito, whose luck got him into the academy. It's just such a great story.
And, like, I will always say this about Makoto. He felt like an evolved Naegi. While I still love Makoto, Hajime really did feel like he got to know the rest of the cast. Like, his interactions with Nagito and
Chiaki,
Soda, and, like, I was about to say, especially Chiaki, you had, like, a really, really interesting character, especially with the mystery that surrounded him. It really felt like it was better for the mystery, but he still felt like a human in, like, Makoto ways.
Like, something I absolutely have to say is that a lot of people's biggest complaints of this series is that the protagonists blend into each other. To which I have to say how. I get Shuichi blending in with other characters, but Hajime is his own separate thing entirely. And in my opinion, the best protagonist this series has ever had.
Right, and not just Hajime, but really the whole cast felt like him and Nagito were huge for that. I mean, without him and Nagito being in case 4 leading into case 5,
Oh boy, things would have gone so
the
much
best
different.
yeah, the best case in Danganronpa history would not have happened if Hajime was not the protagonist.
Yeah. But to conclude, everyone's favorite baby gangsta, Fuyuhiko Kuzuryu.
Yeah, this was kind of obvious from the start because we both had him at number 1.
I think he was the one character we agreed on. Well,
Yeah, I mean,
maybe Sonya.
Fuyuhiko is just that good.
Yeah. What I like is his biggest face turn. You can kind of see from his design, he looks like he's gonna be another Byakuya. And even though at the beginning, where he kind of ends up being that, oh boy, you couldn't be further from the truth with that statement.
Starting from case 2, Fuyuhiko became one of the only the character with the most depth in Danganronpa history. I said Makoto felt real and a human being. Fuyuhiko turns that to 11. He feels the most real out of any character that Danganronpa has ever created.
I also want to say this. One thing I have to appreciate with Fuyuhiko is that he is absolutely a hardened person, but unlike so many other people, he doesn't give you a hard time for not being as hardened as he is.
Right.
Important.
Yeah, go ahead.
Even from case 2 onwards, his importance to the trials cannot be understated, even though it technically does end up being that for a lot of the times, because Chiaki and Nagito.
Right. I mean, Fuyuhiko may have dropped off in importance, but it wasn't by much, especially taking into account case 4. I mean, that one felt like a real moment. Most evidence you find in Danganronpa is based off of luck, detective work from the smartest character, or someone straight up revealing it. Fuyuhiko's evidence was that he could not fall asleep.
A real problem, especially given that they were starving for how many days?
I think it was 2 up to that point.
Well, point being, no food, no water. Like, I'd imagine insomnia would strike someone.
Exactly, and yeah, it felt like that would actually happen. Case 4 overall is one of the most well-rounded cases in Danganronpa, and Fuyuhiko helped with that.
Yeah, what more can we say about Fuyuhiko? I know he's a very understated part of 2, but he's also definitely the best part of 2, and for that alone, on top of him just being my favorite character, gets him this spot at number 1, even though it might feel like there are characters more deserving.
Right.
But with all that said and done, the name has been Bufang, my partner is a Pop-Tart, and we bid you all a good West Pacific Sun, everybody.
See you later, everyone.